We continue on in our series, The Church Begins, and today we come up to A Problem Arises. And reading from Acts chapter 15, verses 1 to 4. Some men came down from Judea and taught the brothers, unless you are circumcised after the custom of Moses, you can't be saved. Therefore, when Paul and Barnabas had no small discord and discussion with them, they appointed Paul and Barnabas and some others of them to go up to Jerusalem to the apostles and elders about this question. They, being sent on their way by the assembly, passed through both Phoenicia and Samaria, declaring the conversion of the Gentiles. They caused great joy to all the brothers. When they had come to Jerusalem, they were received by the assembly and the apostles and the elders, and they reported all things that God had done with them. At its birth, at its beginning, the Apostolic Church, the New Testament Church, was one church under the unitary leadership of the apostles. It had an expanding eldership, often called presbyters, bishops, or overseers. And from earliest days the church had a simple but well-defined order. Elders and deacons were set apart to their particular tasks, as we saw earlier in Acts chapter 6. Members were received upon profession of faith in Jesus Christ, and the sacraments of baptism and the Lord's Supper were administered. Discipline was exercised, in which members who had fallen into sin and remained unrepentant were excluded from the church. The church was never individualistic. That is to say, people did not suddenly decide to join or leave the church, as is too often the case in modern churches. The church was a corporate entity in which pastoral oversight and spiritual authority was exercised by the leadership, a leadership raised up by the Lord Jesus and set apart according to a church policy mediated by the divinely inspired guidance of the apostles. This did not mean that there was neither controversy nor the threat of disunity. From the beginning, problems arose which needed to be resolved with great pastoral, spiritual, and judicial authority. And it is therefore no surprise to find early on a question arising about the nature of membership in the church, and to see the matter being dealt with through the collective leadership of the church, the apostles and elders who met together in a deliberate assembly. The problem arose because some men from Judea came to Antioch and promoted the view that circumcision, according to the law of Moses, was necessary for salvation. They were opposed by Paul and Barnabas. The church must have been seriously upset by the dispute. There was no final resolution, and so help was sought from the church in Jerusalem, still at this point the heartland of the Christian church from which the problem had come in the first place. Paul, Barnabas, and some other believers were reputed to take the case to the apostles and elders in Jerusalem. It is quite impressive to see the orderliness and seemingly good spirit in which they sought to deal with the dispute, or the argument. And this is reflected in the way the news of the conversion of Gentiles was received along their path. This news made all the brothers very glad, as we read in 15 verse 3. The church was one church, united in a glorious obsession with the gospel and the conviction that there is one truth by which the people of God are to be guided and ordered in one undivided body. Every theological and practical controversy potentially threatens the unity of the church. In this case, the issue was fundamental to the meaning and application of the gospel itself. The intense conservatism of some of the Christian Jews was expressed in an insistence that certain regulations of the Old Testament law be required of non-Jewish converts as a prerequisite for their recognition as members of the Church of Jesus Christ. This is, of course, the so-called Judaizing controversy, which, notwithstanding the action of the Jerusalem Council, continued to dog the progress of the New Testament and Apostolic Church, and was to be the target of Paul's epistle to the Galatians.